What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Check the Kick podcast. Sherdog.com is the website. I'm the host, Devin. And sorry, I took a small leave of absence. If you notice, my background is different to the video watchers and not the audio listeners. I moved, and moving sucks. It's been a real pain in the ass, packing all your stuff, moving all your stuff, but I am in a new place, larger home office. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be back with you guys for another episode. I did not get to recap the UFC 298, unfortunately, but I was correct with my pick of Ilia Topuria. We're going to be talking about Ilia in the middle segment of the show, but we march on. Some decent fights over the past weekend, and I'm not even going to call this weekend's UFC card decent, but it is what it is. You know, we got to play with the hand we've been dealt. This past weekend, we had UFC Mexico City, and let's just not do. I mean, the UFC did right by not booking any heavyweight, any light heavyweight, no big boys on this card, but even the flyweights definitely felt the pressure of 7,000 feet of elevation, which is more than a mile, Dominic Cruz. Yeah, 7,000 feet is more than a mile. He had a small blunder on the broadcast this weekend. It was a very funny moment. PFL also had their champ versus champ and kind of got shit kicked by Bellator, and we're going to talk about that too, but we will start off with the Battle of the Brandons. Brennan Royval defeats Brandon Moreno in a kind of weird fight. I actually didn't love it, and I actually scored it for Moreno. Royval definitely won the third round. That's where he kind of buzzed Moreno with that knee, kind of had him up against the cage. But a lot of his offense was just pitter patter stuff getting blocked off of Moreno's guard. He was definitely spamming his jab really well. There's just not a lot to it. And Moreno really had this weird step in and counterpunch with one big shot. And there was a 49-46 scorecard for Brandon Moreno, and a lot of people were giving that judge shit in the media. And it's really not a terrible scorecard, especially if you actually understand the scoring criteria, because impact damage is what is the number one scoring criteria. And 5 to 6 light punches do get outweighed by one big punch as per the scoring criteria. So that's kind of what it is. And back to Moreno's game plan. He's a dude that he has that Khalil Roundtree thing going where we're getting different performances from this dude over and over again. The second Figueiredo fight was really awesome where he went out there, kind of took his back, choked him out. That was really dope. And then the Kai Kara-France fight and that was when James Krause is in his corner, and James Krause did really well. Watching the tape on that one, he's like, hey, finish that combination with your left hook or the left to the body, crushes Kara-France with a body kick and finishes him with ground and pound. Not a lot of jabs from Moreno, and maybe that was due to Brandon Royval being out of southpaw. But his left hook is his best punch, and his lead hand is his best weapon, in my opinion. His left hook and his jab are his best two strikes, and he was buzzing Royval as Royval kind of, tried to crush the distance and close the space. That's kind of Royval's game. Spam a lot of jabs on the outside, enter the pocket. Royval did pretty well stepping in with knees. That's kind of what started the round 3 flurry from Royval, where he kind of, I would say, buzzed up Moreno. But I scored the fight first round for Moreno, second round for Moreno, and I scored the 5th round for Moreno. Yes, Royval probably, I don't know the striking numbers off the top, and I probably should have them for you here on the show, but I don't. Royval might have outlanded him 2-1, but spamming shots off the guard, that's what your guard is for. Your guard is to protect you from damage. And I just, Brandon Moreno's leg kicks worked really well. And yeah, he stalled a little bit, but that's the name of the game. And Herb was like playing that freaking hurry up offense. He was not letting. I mean, there was a moment where Moreno had his hands clasped and pushed Royval against the cage, and maybe 15 seconds have gone by, and Herb's like, "Nope, we're done here." And I thought that was a little bit interesting. Don't really love that. Um, and when it comes to, I understand the action needs to go on. I completely get that, but at the same time, like some Herb is so inconsistent with what he wants to do and what he wants a fight to look like, and it's not congruent between any of the refs, and it can change between fight to fight, even with the same ref. We've seen Goddard do weird shit, and we'll talk about Goddard and Ortega here in a moment. But we've just seen so much inconsistencies between officiating, scoring lately. It's just mind boggling. This whole card, by the way, sidebar, was just absolutely full of weird ass, just weird calls, weird splitties. Like the Jesus Aguilar splitty was weird. Victor Altamirano kind of got shafted in Mexico. I'm not mad about that card, by the way. I'm okay with Victor Altamirano losing. Just found it interesting. Yeah, the whole night was scored weird. This fight was weird. I'm okay with no more fights being an elevation as well. Royval was definitely great with his volume. I think he threw over 500 strikes, which is second to Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. So good for Royval. Royval is actually my flyweight pick for the Sherdog MMA fantasy thing that Keith, myself, Ben, and Jade put together a few months ago. If you haven't watched it, you should go back and watch it just to see where we are right now, to see how far off some of us were or how close to right some of us were. I actually don't know the standings, but I'm sure you can find them somewhere. This Pantoja was in the crowd holding up 0-5, and yeah, this is an impressive win, but I just did not like Moreno's game plan. Right at the start of the third round, he seemed off. I think his weird counter overhand game kind of got him tired. A couple scrambles got him tired. This fight was at 7,000 feet, and I think people are starting to realize there's a big difference between Tijuana and Mexico City, because Tijuana is like at sea level and Mexico City is at like 7,000 feet. And we've learned this. I mean, sea level Kane, we know about these fights at elevation. And I don't think it's necessary. There's plenty of cities across the world that are not at elevation, where elevation actually degrades the product. These fights happening at a mile high or more, anything over 4,000 feet is going to really impact your cardiovascular system, your recovery ability. And fighting is already hard enough. Like, why are we going to make these guys and girls do this? It's just not in their favor at all. It does not work in their favor whatsoever. What's next for Brandon Royval? He cut a decent promo. He said, "I'm third generation Mexican," all those things. That was great. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't speak Spanish, because I think that would have been a time for him to speak some Spanish. But he's a Denver native. He's an American through and through. He said, "No one's going to be holding me down anymore." He looked great, by the way. Anytime Moreno took him down, it was the floor is lava. Showed some great K guard. He even threatened an omoplata, and kind of, Moreno kind of shrugged it off. But I think that maybe it was a go-go plata. The go-go plata was a lot closer. Yeah, I think it was a go-go, because that's what Nick Diaz hit. Yeah, go-go plata. He was very close, and that was really cool. I like the active guard game. I like him, and we'll talk about active guard playing with the next fight here. But I like dudes that are, aggressive with their guard, but also aggressive in just scrambling and getting the fuck out of there. Because in MMA in 2024, and I said this last year, in MMA in 2023, you're not going to win fights off your back. People are just too good for that anymore. And I didn't do any tape study going into this fight again because I've been moving. So I didn't come into this blind, but I'm very familiar with all the fighters at this point. You know, you do stuff like this for long enough, you become very familiar. But Moreno, I just, the James Krause thing, he seemed to be really thriving under James Krause, and then that whole debacle went down, and I just don't. I feel like he needs to get with like a camp that's gonna like, because he's too good. I still think Brandon Moreno is probably like the best flyweight on the planet. And I think he's just too good to be fighting the way he fought this past Saturday. Yeah, his leg kicks are great. He was finishing combinations and crushing Royval with leg kicks. His wrestling and his entries look good. He would throw a kick, he would throw a body kick at Royval and know that Royval was going to fire back. And then the second Royval would fire the kickback, he would take the leg and get a takedown. Like all that stuff, boom, and come right over the top of the takedown, get the knee tap and come over the shoulder. That's all fine and dandy, but his striking just, I mean, I feel like he could have afforded to hang out in the pocket a lot more instead of stepping in and just landing one shot. I feel like he could have relied on his defense and his guard and made some prolonged exchanges and you know, throw some 3 and 4 punch combinations, lead him with your jab. Yeah, you're fighting a southpaw, but the same advantages and disadvantages you have are the same that he has because he's the one that's the southpaw. Your rear hands line up for each other. Maybe wrestle more, but all of this, it really looked like he was impacted by the elevation. Brandon Royval, he calls for Pantoja. Like I said, Pantoja was holding up the 0-5 in the crowd. And, it sucks that Manel Kopp just can't get his shit together. But, yeah, we're in this big, like, ring around the rosy thing where Pantoja couldn't beat Figueiredo. Royval's already lost to Pantoja twice in pro MMA. Moreno's lost once, on the Ultimate Fighter. So I guess that doesn't count for their pro record, but still a freaking loss. And then he's lost 2 times on his pro record. So like, it's flyweight, so you can technically keep feeding these guys, but we need somebody to come show up. Amir Albazi can't get his shit together. Got injured. It was a neck injury, so who knows how long that dude's going to be out for. And flyweight is such a tough weight class with such a small window. And you saw in this past card with guys like Denise Bondar, who are like true flyweights, but just a true flyweight is like so small there. He just got freaking bullied. So you got such a small window with age and weight cutting and all that, man, guys like Kopp who should probably be fighting for a title just can't get it together, can't make the weight. It's just flyweight is such a good division with such good fighters. I think some of the best fighters, all in all, pound for pound, are at flyweight, and they just can't get it together. I really don't know what Royval does next. I guess he could fight for a title. UFC 301 is supposed to be in Brazil. So I think that makes all the sense in the world. Put a hasty fight together. Pantoja is just going to do the same thing to the dude. I mean, yeah, whatever. I guess you make Royval Pantoja 3. And if Royval figures out how to win, here we go. Here we go again with the rematches that flyweight. For Brandon Moreno, he needs a step back, but not too much of a step back. And we just have to see where Amir Albazi is at this point. Henry Cejudo called out Brandon Moreno. There's a ton of history there. I mean, I am assuming, I don't think Henry Cejudo, he's 37. I don't think that dude's making 125 again. And maybe a one-off against Cejudo as a co-main event on some non-pay-per-view travel show, or maybe a main event at the Apex could be cool. Give Moreno and Henry a chance to kind of settle their business, and then Moreno doesn't have to cut all the weight. He didn't take damage in this fight. He didn't get lumped up. He didn't get buzzed. If anything, he's the one, in my opinion, that dished out the most damage. Tough spot for Moreno here. Decent win for Royval. And I mean, I guess it's flyweight, so they just have to move on. Moving on to probably the most impressive performance from UFC Mexico City, we have Brian Ortega submitting Yair Rodriguez via arm triangle in the third round after suffering quite the shit kicking in typical Brian Ortega way. But he hung tough, and the first round, most people scored. I saw a lot of 10-9s, but some people scored a 10-8. I know one of the judges scored it a 10-8. That same judge scored the second round a 10-8 for Brian Ortega. I'm kind of cool with that. I think we need to see more 10-8s. 10-8s are supposedly like 10% of every round. Featherweight's got a lot of 10-8 rounds. Shit. I mean, I'm thinking about 10-8 rounds, and I remember Ilia Topuria and Josh Emmett, we saw a 10-7 round, which is like 10-7 means a fight needed to be stopped. And yeah, I wonder how many 10-8s Holloway got against Cater, another featherweight fight. It's neither here nor there. Back to this. Yair Rodriguez comes out and he's venomous, as he always is, especially in the first round of a fight. He's got great kicks, decent hands. He stepped in, and Brian Ortega got overzealous and got crushed with the clean shot, kind of went to his back. He got crushed with body kicks, punches up top, and he was down and out. But towards the end of that first round, he gets a takedown, gets some top control. Second round goes down, gets a takedown against the cage, gets a beautiful double leg high elevation takedown, takes him down. And knowing Yair has such an active guard off of his back, he kind of did an old school MMA thing where he just like shoved the mother effer into the corner of the cage, control him enough where he can't, cage walk and use the cage to get up. But if you crush the distance, Yair does not have the ability to throw up those submissions off his back. He can't get the distance. And Yair does have a very active guard. In their first fight, it ended kind of via armbar due to injury, in my opinion, from what it looked like. Yeah, it got, labeled as a no contest, but Yair was going for that armbar. And in this situation, number one, I'm not sure if the elevate Yair has been known to flag, but if you look at the Frankie Edgar fight, which I guarantee they tape studied, they saw that he was able to get takedowns against the cage. And Brian Ortega may not look like the most bricked up, cut up, beefy guy, but he is definitely very strong and very, very tough. And right when he pushed, anytime he wanted takedowns, he had success. That definitely seems to be a chink in Yair's armor. Max Holloway had success with takedowns. Anyone that's really wanted to take Yair down has. Volk, same thing. The Yair's fight with Ilia Topuria is gone, and it kind of seemed like a foregone conclusion. Even myself, I was like, yeah, Yair's just going to go out there. I thought it was going to look like the first round for 3 rounds, and then he's probably going to finish Ortega. But man, Ortega, maybe the Eagle thing worked. Maybe Tracy Cortez being in the crowd worked. This is the first time. This is the first time I watched Brian Ortega win a whole entire round. And then in the round right after, win in very dominant fashion. Yes, he did get 10-8'd in the first round, so he did still take a big freaking licking before he came back. But yeah, for a dude that had such a long layoff with all the injuries, he did the freaking jump to kind of get himself warmed up, where he jumped and stamped his feet and looked like he blew up his ankle. He even looked at his corner. He said he was panicked, but he seems to be in a good place now. He said he's married in a post-fight interview. I typically won't shout out other media stuff, but Full Send, guy that runs Full Send MMA, is a buddy of mine. So go listen to his interview with Brian Ortega. He asked Brian Ortega how he was doing personally. I thought that was a really good interview. And Brian Ortega said he's married. There was a woman with him in the post-fight picture they took. So apparently he's married. He's got 2 kids. Apparently he's got all of his shit together. I'm happy to hear it. And the UFC is going to absolutely love booking Ilia Topuria versus Brian Ortega. The UFC loves putting Brian Ortega in title fights. And I mean, we'll talk about Ilia Topuria here in a moment, but the dude seems to be an effing star. I think up until this point, Evloev had the best, case for a title fight, but Arnold Allen and Evloev, Dana White, the guy that runs the freaking show, said it was the most boring fight he'd ever seen. I don't agree with that, but I don't get to make that call. He does. That's his opinion. For Yair, I think him and Evloev makes sense. Maybe him versus Arnold Allen. Maybe him versus Giga Chikadze, or even like Dan Ige. Dan Ige deserves a step up. He's been freaking nuking fools. It's so crazy how he just went out there and decisively shit kicked Josh Emmett for the interim belt, and then has now lost 2 fights in a row via stoppage. And maybe I personally thought higher of Yair Rodriguez than he should have. I don't know. He looked good against Max Holloway. In a loss to Max Holloway is what kind of earned him an interim title fight in a weird effed up way. And he just beat the shit out of Josh Emmett. And look what Josh Emmett's doing. Josh Emmett went toe-to-toe with the champ. Okay, not toe-to-toe. Won 5 rounds with the champ. Absolutely nuked Bryce Mitchell for the 2023 knockout of the year, in my opinion. And then now he's off a 2-fight lose streak. So he needs a step back. I think the UFC needs to, at this point, utilize Yair Rodriguez's name to build someone. Evloev is never going to fight for a title unless he goes out there and fucking finishes somebody. We're at the point where him and Bilal Muhammad are drinking out of the same water fountain, where they're just, I don't know what it is, but no one seems to give a shit about them. Evloev is clearly good. Or you know what? Like, Edson Barbosa and Yair Rodriguez would make a fun-ass fight. And I know that's a step back in the rankings, but you get finished twice. That's kind of what you deserve. You're not a champion. You're former interim champion, which is great. He'll always have that on his record, which will always yield him more money. Yeah. And then Brian Ortega needs to fight for the title. Max Holloway is wrapped up at UFC 300, and he is probably punching the air right now. He's wrapped up in a fight with Justin Gaethje. And I hate to break it to you. Personally, if I had to fight one of these dudes, if it was like, hey, you got to fight Ilia Topuria or you got to fight Justin Gaethje, I'm equally scared of both of them. Justin Gaethje has a little bit of a longer reign of violence than Ilia Topuria, but Ilia Topuria is equally violent. So Max has got his hands pretty tied up with Justin Gaethje, in my opinion. Win, lose, or draw that fight, he's not leaving. He's not leaving that cage without a little piece of him left in there. So I don't, Yeah, and Ortega got lumped up in this fight too, but Topuria is doing a press tour right now. Let's say maybe International Fight Week in the summer. It's March. It's about to be March. So what did they do that in July? Yeah, that's plenty of time. Let's do Topuria versus Ortega, International Fight Week. I'm calling it right now. And just to cap off that UFC fight night in Mexico City, Daniel Zellhuber had a great fight against Francisco Prado. Prado won the first round. Zellhuber came back and won the last 2. Kid's like 24 years old, big 6'1" lightweight, great jab. The dude seems definitely like he's going to go places. Yasmin Haragi beat Sam Hughes. Manuel Torres, that dude is just like definitely need to tune in to watch him fight all the time. Submits Chris Duncan after getting his bell rung. Edgar Chairez beats Daniel Da Silva, and Da Silva's like 0-6 in the promotion. Kind of funny. And not too much, not that great of a fight. Not that great of a watching the whole card front to back. I just did not think it was that awesome. Hopefully next time the UFC goes to Mexico, it's not at Elevation. Let's do this in Tijuana. And let's just kind of bring some better fighters there. Moving on, we're going to talk about the PFL Tour, PFL versus Bellator, champ versus champ. A lot of really impressive performances. AJ McKee submitting Clay Collard like insta sub. Aaron Pico getting his win back against Henry Corrales. Clarissa Shields gets another professional MMA win. I don't know how long she's for this, and I don't know how long the fan base is going to be able to watch her fight. Pretty fun stuff on the card. Jason Jackson, the ass-kicking machine, literally kicked Ray Cooper's ass. Short notice performance. That kind of short notice opponent. That was kind of to be expected. Vadim Nemkov kind of has a weird back and forth striking match with Bruno Capoloza, gets stung, and then immediately shoots a takedown, and then immediately gets a submission. And it's like, dude, Nemkov, why are you playing these MMA games? Like, you moved up to heavyweight. He looks big. He weighed more than Bruno Capoloza. I think he was like 236 or 242, something like that. Like, why are you playing these tit for tat striking games with these dudes when you know that it's like you put your plan B against his plan A, and your plan B is just as good as his plan A, but your plan A is so much better than his plan A. Just go fucking wrestle, dude. That's your thing. It's heavyweight. Like, ask DC about light heavyweights at heavyweight and what you're supposed to do. Typically, going down a weight class, you want to be the bigger guy and you want to wrestle. Typically, coming up a weight class, you want to strike. But when you're a light heavyweight and you're coming up to heavyweight, typically the light heavyweights are wrestlers. Like, dude, just go wrestle these fools. Nemkov could probably beat Renan Ferreira. We're going to talk about Renan Ferreira right now. Renan Ferreira ices Ryan Bader in a lot of people seem to be on Bader here, and I tossed it into the Sherdog Slack early in the day. These fights were early in the day. I had MMA all day this past Saturday, which is pretty cool. But I threw it in the Sherdog Slack chat, and I go, how long until how long is it going to take for Renan Ferreira to ice Ryan Bader? And I was just like, this is the Rumble Johnson fight all over again, but worse. Because Ferreira is just bigger, so he's even more scary than Rumble Johnson. Renan Ferreira is huge. Like, when these dudes got matched up next to each other, Ryan Bader, I thought he was just going to go dive on a single leg and die, but he didn't. But, he tried to play his in and out jab game, but Renan Ferreira just threw a 1-2 down pike and just wrecked him. And that's his thing. He's huge and he hits very hard and he's a super athlete and he's got some deficiencies. He's definitely not the best wrestler. It's heavyweight. Would I pick Nemkov to beat him? Probably. But could I see Nemkov getting absolutely iced? Yeah. That was, and Renan Ferreira, when he won his $1 million this time out, he got laid on for a round. And then if you try to have 50-50 exchanges with Renan Ferreira, he's just too fucking big. He's too dangerous. He is going to ice fools. That's his thing. And he's pretty good. Ice Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader was 40. All the odds were against him. That's why he was the dog in this fight. I would love to see Renan Ferreira fight Vadim Nemkov in hilarious fashion. Also, the pacing of this card was great, but like, why is John Jones parading around looking chubby? I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I don't know what they're called. The Middle Eastern outfit with the headdress thing. To go onto the broadcast, Sean O'Connell was there saying like, well, are you the baddest man on the planet? Or is it Francis Ngannou? Why aren't you fighting Francis? And it's like, why are you trying to bait John Jones into this UFC versus PFL thing that's never going to happen? The likelihood of me waking up with a third or fourth arm is more likely than that. I also think it's very, very unlikely Francis Ngannou ever fights MMA again. And I've been saying that the moment his fight got booked against Tyson Fury. The moment that fight got booked, I was like, if this fight happens, Francis Ngannou's never fighting MMA again. Sure as shit, he goes out there and has a great performance against Tyson Fury in a loss. Yeah, he's booked against Anthony Joshua like very soon. And they're talking about him fighting the winner of Renan Ferreira and Ryan Bader. That shit ain't fucking happening. PFL got absolutely bamboozled by Francis Ngannou. And it's funny because this is probably the exact reason why the UFC was just not willing to play the Francis Ngannou hardball. Francis Ngannou did end up securing the bag. He did make his coin, but like, this is why the UFC was not willing to entertain that shit. They're talking about, oh, Francis Ngannou is fighting the winner of this fight. Renan Ferreira wins, and they had it all set up for this face-off. They put the camera on Francis Ngannou like 100 times. He was sitting next to his trainer, Mike Tyson. Fights ended, and Francis is already fucking leaving. He's gone. He's going back to Vegas. He's like, I don't like Saudi Arabia. Get me out of here. For anyone that thinks that Francis Ngannou is going to fight Renan Ferreira or fights MMA again under the PFL banner, I mean, he's fighting Anthony Joshua. Do y'all know how much money he's going to make win, lose, or draw? He's not fighting PFL. Like, it's just not going to happen. There's no one there there's not one fighter under the PFL Bellator banner that is worth Francis Ngannou putting in an MMA training camp. The dude's got 2 bum knees that have, both have had reconstructive surgery. Francis Ngannou probably doesn't want to train any wrestling, probably doesn't want to train any MMA. It's just not going to happen. And I think the fight to make is Renan Ferreira versus Vadim Nemkov. Make it. That's the fight we all want to see. And I'm here for it. That's those are probably the best 2 heavyweights under their banner. Cool. I'm here for it. Great win by Renan Ferreira. Ryan Bader, the dude's probably going to retire. I mean, he's been grasping at straws with his career for the last, X amount of fights, and great timing for him when he had to fight Fedor and all those things. Maybe Linton Vassell can show up and fight one of these dudes too. That'd be cool. But I don't know what Ryan Bader's going to do. Moving on to what I was probably the most anticipated, my most anticipated fight. It was not Yoel Romero versus Thiago Santos, even though shout out to Yoel Romero getting wins at 46 years old, and clear wins at this level, making the money he's making. Great for him. But we have Johnny Eblen defeating Impa Kasanganay for their middleweight unification title thing, even though PFL doesn't even have a middleweight division, but I guess they do now. And it sucks. Really, the fight I was most hyped about was the Jesus Pinedo versus Pitbull. I think Pinedo was going to go out there and ice him, and then Braga got matched up, and then that shit fell through. That guy just... It's the same thing as the Jason Jackson and the Ray Cooper thing, because I think Jason Jackson could contend with any of the top 5 welterweights in the UFC. I think Jason Jackson's very fucking good. We'll never know, especially if they got him fighting dudes like Ray Cooper. Back to Johnny Eblen and Impa Kasanganay. I think Impa Kasanganay won this fight. I think he kind of got robbed. I also don't think Johnny Eblen's the best middleweight in the world. I think Impa Kasanganay has made drastic improvements. And I think Impa Kasanganay is a very good MMA fighter. But I think he did the more damage in the first round. The second round clearly did the most damage. Could have maybe even almost scored at a 10-8, kind of blew his load, and then had a close, tepid third round where he got taken down late on a bit. Johnny Eblen got exposed. They were talking about his 5-round cardio, and people were saying, well, what if this fight was 5 rounds? It wasn't, number one. Number two, he up to this fight, he had been doing like the OnlyFans model. He did the Colby Covington thing, but he took it to like the next level where he had like OnlyFans models feeding him and all this stuff. And man, to do all that and come out here, and I thought he lost the fight. This is one of those, like, if you're holding the Johnny Eblen betting slip, you got gifted, man. You're ready to fucking tear that thing up and throw it away. Impa's power, his combination punching, he almost wrecked Eblen. It could have been a 10-8 round. Eblen came back, fought through it. He is a champion. He is a great fighter, still undefeated, but this was the most adversity he's faced. I mean, you could take all of his 14 fights and combine them together. I think he's got 14 fights. I think it's 14. God. Now I got to look it up. I was right, 14. 15 including the Impa win. But this is like the most damage he's taken. You combine all those fights together, and just in one round, and round number 2 of this fight is definitely the most adversity he's faced. And he showed some champion mettle, But man, I just would hate to see him have to fight a dude, you know. Uh, what would an Israel Adesanya? I'm not even a big Israel fan, but man, you're getting laced up like that. Israel's got good takedown defense. What is someone like Sean Strickland going to do to you? What's Robert Whittaker or Paulo Costa? I mean, God, Paulo Costa, a giant man that you can't hurt. That's a pretty good defensive wrestler that has a big power. Yeah, I don't like Johnny Eblen against any of the top five. He was talking shit about Dricus. I've never picked Dricus to win a fight confidently, but I'd confidently pick him to beat the Johnny Eblen that we just saw. Matchmaking for these guys, I say run that shit back. Run that shit back for 5 rounds. Do it like, somewhere down the line, whenever PFL has their next card, throw that in as the main event. That was a banger of a fight, violent. Impa came in. Impa's made so many improvements. I'm just not seeing the Johnny Eblen improvements, but the improvements I'm seeing Impa Kasanganay make. I mean, the kid's fucking good. His story is incredible. He's on the ultimate knockout highlight reel. And you look at him compared to Joaquin Buckley today. The dude won like 5 fights in a row, won $1 million, and then just had a close fight with another champ. I think Impa Kasanganay is winning in life right now, even off of a loss. Good for him. And I love to see guys shift out of the UFC, go 2-2 in the UFC, and then just go on the run he's run. Man, if he would have won this fight, blow the ceiling off. And I still think he did great. And shout out to Johnny Eblen. He took a lot of damage and hung tough. That was the first segment of the show. Out with the old. We're here to talk about cool stuff that's trending right now. What's hot? Second segment of the show. We're going to talk about UFC 306. Supposedly, the Mexican Independence Day card will be at the Sphere. I think it's going to be a one and done because the tickets are probably going to be like $1 billion to get into that place. But fuck, man, if you're in Vegas, maybe I'll try to go. Maybe not. We'll see. I'm much more of a weird watch fights alone, sweating, pacing in front of my TV, than I am a big arena person. I don't like the typical MMA/UFC fan. The public intoxication mixed with the face punching, not my thing. Real quick, did y'all see that dude, the dude in the black shirt that was just like icing fools in the crowd at UFC Mexico? That was funny. That was dope. Just like dope, like knocked 2 dudes out in a row. Big fight in the crowd, and Dana was like, nobody wanted to stop it. I'm cool with it. Let it go down. UFC 306 at the Sphere. The Sphere is this giant. I mean, if you've never heard of the Sphere, you're living under a rock, or maybe you're living under the Sphere. But Google this shit. Look up the Sphere in Vegas. It's this crazy, like 3-dimensional. I don't even know. It's like when I was a kid, we used to go to these laser light shows at this planetarium down in Miami, and it was just crazy 3-dimensional trippy thing. And the Sphere is like that times 1,000,000. So I could only imagine. I've seen like they showed some clips of like a U2 concert there. It looks incredible. Go to YouTube and go check out the Sphere. Dana said he fell in love with it. He said he's been wanting to do a show there. Well, he's going to make it happen. So UFC 306 will be at the Sphere. Pretty freaking cool. Don't know who's going to headline that. Probably, there's plenty of Mexican fighters that we don't have any. We have Alexa Grasso. Maybe Alexa Grasso, they'll probably hold out for her. She probably won't headline it, but they could probably slot her in with the co-main. Maybe if Zhang Weili goes out there and beats the shit out of Yan Xiaonan at 300, we could get like a champ versus champ thing. That'd be huge for the Sphere. Again, I don't think they'll put a women's flyweight title bout as the main event, but I can definitely see them doing the co-main there. Trying to think about divisions here and what it could potentially look like. Not too sure. Heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, not really. Welterweight, not really. I mean, we got Merab Dvalishvili. He's Mexican now, apparently. But maybe we'll get like the Henry Cejudo versus Brandon Moreno on there. There's plenty of Mexican fighters that they could throw on there, and plenty of Mexican American fighters. Maybe Brian Ortega versus Ilia Topuria be the main event. Co-main event, Zhang Wei Li versus Alexa Grasso. You could throw freaking Yair Rodriguez, steal all the high performers, Manuel Torres, not Francisco Prado, Zellhuber. You could throw all those dudes on there. And it's at the Sphere, so it's going to be freaking huge. Be really, really cool. Let me know what you guys think about the Sphere in the comments below. One more thing we got to talk about, especially since I did not get to do a UFC 298 recap. All this damn talk about UFC 300. We're going to talk about Ilia Topuria and his potential star power. He went and kicked the opening. I don't know anything about soccer, football, but he went and I guess it's the equivalent of the opening pitch. He went in front of Real Madrid, which is a huge soccer club in Spain. He's been on their front page of the newspaper. He was an honorary guest there in front of this giant stadium full of people. Spanish media was asking Dana about doing a show over there in Spain, and he was asking them how big the arena is. They could damn sure fill that arena. And Ilia Topuria's star power continuously grows. He's such a venomous fighter with such, so many finishes, such high level abilities, and he's here. He's so good on the mic. He speaks English, he speaks Spanish, and he speaks Georgian. And I believe he may speak German as well. The dude's fluent in multiple languages. He's bilingual, trilingual, quadlingual. You lose me at trilingual. But yeah, the dude seems to be a star. He's a great looking dude. He's Mr. Still Your Girl. If he was only a little bit taller, I'm sure he'd have even more success in that department. But he's calling out Islam Makhachev, reposting him getting knocked out, saying he'd love to go contend for a 155-pound belt. And get some more title defenses at 145, bro. Go beat Movsar Evloev and maybe go beat Volk one more time. If that rematch is warranted. I don't think it is, in my opinion. I love Volk to death, but he got absolutely iced. Go beat Brian Ortega and Movsar Evloev. Go finish those two guys, and then you can go up and challenge Islam if Islam still has the belt. Or you can go up and challenge, but at least do two. And I would rather you do 5 title defenses before you even entertain moving up. But the way that things are, the trajectory of fighters today are very different than it used to be. These guys, Sean O'Malley was talking about moving up and fighting Ilia after Ilia wins. He's like, yeah, I think I want to fight Merab. Yeah, don't blame you, dude. Because Ilia would probably take your lunch money. Are there openings for Ilia, against a back foot counterpuncher? Yes. But I don't think Sean O'Malley, I hate to say this about a fighter as good as Sean O'Malley, but he's got a puncher's chance against Ilia. And Ilia is the puncher in that fight too. Oh, and don't forget, he can grapple and wrestle very well. That's his number one thing, PJJ. But the kid's a freaking star, man. He's clearly got the rockets, the booster hooked up to him. He's sky's the limit. I'm very curious to see what you guys think of Ilia Topuria. I'm high on him. I called him to beat Alexander Volkanovski, and I have a good friend of mine. Him and I were talking 6 months ago. This is, after he beat Bryce Mitchell. I was like, hey, Ilia Topuria is going to be the guy that beats Volk. And he called me crazy. And I'm like, man, venomous power in the pocket. Volk is not the most durable dude. He's got good submissions. And Ilia's getting better. He everywhere he goes, he wears that wonderful suit. The kid looks like $1 million. He speaks so many different languages. He's got a chokehold in so many different parts of the world. Georgia, Spain. He can have American fans with this English speaking. He'll probably be a main event. In his next fight, I'd like him to fight Ortega in the Sphere. I think that'd be cool. We just talked about that. Tell me what you guys think about Ilia Topuria, man. The kid's a freaking star. I mean, he was on their head head page of their newspaper, in the arena, getting handshakes from all the Real Madrid players. That's huge. That's huge. Getting co-tweeted by them, getting posted by them on social media. It's awesome. Shout out to Ilia Topuria. Moving on to the final segment of the show, in with the new. Sorry, guys, I'm not even too hype about the fights this weekend. The card starts really early in the day, which is cool. The Raul Rosas and Ricky Tercios card fight is not on this card. Actually, the UFC announced that it was, and it got moved to, I believe, the March 2nd card, which kind of makes a little more sense because this card is not that great. The whole thing was weird with Raul Rosas anyway. And I think the UFC is just grabbing the e-brake on their Raul Rosas hype machine. But we talk about fights that are going to happen. We're going to talk about 2 fights. Other segments of the show were very long, so I just picked out 2. Umar Nurmagomedov is fighting this weekend, and I'm happy to see him get a fight. They had so much trouble booking this kid. But we're going to talk about probably a potential title challenger at flyweight, someone I did not talk about as a potential opponent for Pantoja, but we have Muhammad Mokaev taking on Alex Perez. Crazy odds on this fight, by the way. Alex Perez is a plus 250 underdog. Muhammad Mokaev is the big favorite, coming in at minus 310. And Muhammad Mokaev is another undefeated fighter. UK by way of Dagestan. He's 11-0, so he's on an 11-fight win streak, and he has you can go look at his record. One of the most highly touted prospects that's come to the UFC and come to MMA, period. The dude's got like 20 amateur fights, also undefeated there. As a professional, he's really good win over Cody Durden. That's a good win. Submission. Charles Johnson beat Charles Johnson, completely ragdolled him. That's a great win. The Jafel Filo, he literally got his leg snapped in half via knee bar, didn't tap, and then goes out there in the next round and gets a neck crank. His most recent fight against Tim Elliott, judges had him down 2 rounds in just a weird, lackluster kind of, Tim Elliott-y performance. But he goes out there in the 3rd round and gets the arm triangle submission. The dude's a finisher, an incredible grappler. And then we have Alex Perez, a dude that has not fought since July 30th of 22, where he lost via neck crank to Alejandro Pantoja. Before that, he got guillotined by Davison Figueiredo in 2020. He finished Jussier Formiga in 2020 via TKO with leg kicks, and then beat Jordan Espinoza in 2020 via arm triangle choke. He actually choked him all the way out. The dude has had a laundry list. And if you guys are curious to know, I will go through it. So on May 15th of 2021, he was supposed to fight Matt Schnell, canceled. July 31st of 21, he was supposed to fight Askar Askarov, canceled. He was booked against Matt Schnell 3 more times in a row. All of those bouts were canceled. Then he got booked against Askar Askarov again in July 16th of 22, canceled. Shows up July 30th, takes a short notice fight against Alejandro Pantoja, loses via rear naked choke, and then has a fight with Emir Albazi in December of 22, canceled. Kai Kara France, February of 23, canceled. March of 23 was supposed to fight Manal Kopp, canceled bout, and then gets a draw against Roman Bravo Young, 6/29 of 23. That was in a grappling tournament. Roman Bravo Young, to have a draw against Roman Bravo Young is really, really impressive. But this dude, out of his, he's got so many canceled fights. He's plagued in his career. I'm going to go through. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. He has 24 pro wins and 13 canceled fights. It's got to be a record. The dude's got health issues. He's unlucky, but he's a grappler. That's his thing. Decent striking, but he's mostly a grappler. He likes to wrestle. He's a pretty good wrestler. Muhammad Mokaev, that's also his thing, but I think Muhammad Mokaev is a little bit more submissional based. Muhammad Mokaev suffers from the young prospect syndrome, where he's undefeated. He's had so much experience, lower level in the amateur scene over in the UK, where if he is not getting shit kicked and he's having 50-50 grappling exchanges with you, he thinks he's winning. And that could be a problem against someone like Alex Perez, but Alex Perez is so inconsistent. He's pretty highly ranked in the UFC's flyweight division still. And an impressive win, could warrant a potential title fight, especially the way that Pantoja is 0-5 against the, number 1 and number 2 ranked guys in the division and potential title challengers. I'm on Muhammad Mokaev in this fight. I think Mokaev has the ability to scramble and just grab a submission anywhere. He's got pretty decent striking, but this fight will not be contended on the feet. Mokaev has a pretty good gas tank. He's very, very tough. You can break his limbs. Clearly, ask Philo about that. He blew up his knee in a knee bar and did not tap. So unless you're choking this dude all the way to sleep, unless you get a tech sub on him, he ain't tapping. You're gonna have to rip his fucking arm off. It's gonna have to look like Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill for him to lose a fight. And yeah, it could look just like the Tim Elliott fight where he never gets the sub. If it's the Tim Elliott fight where he doesn't get the sub, he loses. And that could totally happen because Alex Perez can scramble. It's flyweight. All these dudes are scrambly and vicious there. But give me Muhammad Mokaev to get a second round submission. Alex Perez is notorious for being overzealous in grappling exchanges and putting himself into positions where he gets submitted. That's exactly how he lost to Davison Figueiredo. And I think Muhammad Mokaev could do the thing. And I think if Muhammad Mokaev does this, he calls for a title shot. And I wouldn't be mad at it. Muhammad Mokaev's second round submission, that's the pick. Moving on to the main event, we have Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Shamil Gaziev. Gaziev is the small favorite here, minus 155. Rozenstruik is coming back at plus 160. I believe this is Rozenstruik's 6th main event. Yeah, they're like all at the Apex and shit, and all it takes is to be a heavyweight and have knockout power. Gaziev, however, on the other hand, he's got one fight in the UFC. However, that one fight was an absolute shit kicking of Martin Budai in a fight that he was an underdog in going into. That was back December 16th of 23. So fast turnaround for him. Gaziev, he is a Dagestan fighter by way of Bahrain, I believe. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, he's from Suriname, so I think that would make him. I don't know. He's from Suriname. Very small country, and it's funny because I actually grew up with a kid that was from Suriname. He's 13-5, coming off of a rear naked choke loss to Jailton Almeida, May 13th of 23. Prior to that, quick first round sub 30-second knockout of Chris Daukaus. Got absolutely shit kicked by Alexander Volkov, and then got beat up by Blades pretty badly. He's kind of traded wins and losses since his win against Alistair Overeem. Right after he beat Overeem, he got absolutely obliterated by Francis Ngannou, the boxer, in Francis Ngannou's weirdest / one of most violent performances. Gaziev is a dude that likes to press the action. He's got good combinations, as he showed against Budai. He laced Budai up on the feet, up against the cage. He's gonna wrestle. Like the way you beat Jairzinho Rozenstruik it's got big power, semi-technical kickboxing. He's got good leg kicks. He's definitely not afraid to be in the pocket with anybody. Francis Ngannou's swinging bombs at him, and he's there, sits down on a leg kick and gets absolutely crushed by Ngannou. That's his thing, though. He wants to make these, pocket fights in the pocket. He will throw kicks from the outside, but his thing mainly is to close the distance, jump into range, throwing big hooks like he did against Alistair Overeem when he blew his fucking face up against the cage. That was really cool. But up until then, he was getting absolutely beat up until the very last second of the 5th round of their fight. He's low output. He's dangerous, but not extremely dangerous. Yes, I would not want to take a punch from him if I had to. I would not want to do a power slap thing with him, but Gaziev just has way more tools. I think he could probably go out there and just walk Jairzinho down. Jairzinho is not good on the back foot at all. If you force Jairzinho to be a back foot counterpuncher, he's just not good at it. That's just like not his thing. He wants to move forward and just flood you with big power. But he's become very low output. And Gaziev can wrestle. Jairzinho's major hole in his game is his grappling. Look what Jailton Almeida did to him. Yeah, Jailton Almeida's a good grappler, and that's Jailton Almeida's thing. But Gaziev should just go out there, take him down, submit him. I think it'll be a round one submission. He'll take him down, force him to give his back, and probably get like a rear naked choke, or maybe he'll get some sort of, heavyweight fat guy submission on top. Maybe something weird like a key lock or an Americana or something, or maybe he'll just ground and pound him. This fight will probably end on the ground. Gaziev will probably be getting his hand raised at the end. So give me Gaziev round one. I'm going to go submission, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was TKO via ground and pound. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sherdog.com. Check the kick. Can I get it right? It's this shoulder. I can't even pick the right shoulder. It's too late in the day. There's the sign. Sherdog.com is the website. That's my handle. There we go. I got that right. Dev Goes Fishing. Hit me up on social media. Comment below. I'm happy to interact with you guys. Again, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the fights.